"Sir, please don't fall asleep," the homeless girl whispered, her trembling voice barely audible beneath the steady rhythm of rain against the pavement. The storm had swept across Manhattan without warning, turning neon lights into blurred streaks of color that shimmered across the slick sidewalks. Beneath the flickering glow of a street lamp on West 57th Street, 17-year-old Naomi Carter knelt beside a stranger lying motionless in the cold night air. Her worn sneakers were soaked through, and her thin hoodie clung to her skin, but she didn't move away. She couldn't. Not when the man's breathing was shallow, not when his face, pale beneath the dim amber light, carried a quiet vulnerability that stirred something deep within her heart. Naomi had learned long ago that the world rarely stopped for people like her. Invisible to hurried crowds and ignored by polished shoes rushing past, she had survived by staying unnoticed. Yet tonight, she refused to walk away. Raindrops dripped from her braids as she gently placed her hand near the stranger's shoulder, careful and respectful. "Stay with me," she murmured softly, her voice steady despite the chill in the air. The man's tailored coat was drenched, its fine wool clinging to him as proof that he belonged to a world far removed from hers. Naomi hesitated only for a second before slipping off her own faded jacket, the only warmth she possessed, and draping it over him. The fabric was thin, but the gesture was sincere, offered with quiet dignity. Her fingers trembled as she pulled out a cracked cell phone from her pocket, its screen glowing faintly in the darkness. She dialed 911, pressing the device close to her ear as thunder rolled overhead. "Please," she said, her voice urgent yet composed. "There's a man here. He collapsed. He needs help." In the distance, the wail of sirens pierced the rain, growing louder with every passing second. Naomi exhaled softly, relief washing over her as she stayed beside him, shielding his face from the downpour with her small hands. For a fleeting moment, the stranger's eyes fluttered open, dark and unfocused, meeting hers beneath the halo of the streetlight. In that silent exchange, gratitude flickered between them like a spark in the night. "You're safe," she whispered gently. "Help is coming." The paramedics arrived swiftly, their red and blue lights reflecting across glass towers and puddles alike. They moved with calm precision, lifting the man onto a stretcher as Naomi stepped back, her heart pounding. One of them paused, glancing at her with quiet respect. "You did the right thing," he said. She nodded, wrapping her arms around herself as the rain continued to fall. As they prepared to leave, another paramedic opened the stranger's wallet to confirm his identity. His expression shifted, eyes widening slightly before he leaned closer to his partner. "Do you realize who this is?" he murmured. Naomi blinked, confused, unaware of the revelation unfolding before her. To her, he was simply a man in need. But as the ambulance doors closed and sped into the storm, the city lights shimmered with a promise she could not yet see. Because the stranger she had saved was not just any man. He was Ethan Caldwell, one of the most powerful billionaires in America, and the quiet act of kindness she had offered beneath a lonely street lamp was about to change both of their lives forever. The rain faded into a distant whisper as dawn broke over Manhattan, painting the skyline in hues of pale gold and silver. While Naomi Carter sat quietly beneath the steel beams of the Queensboro Bridge, her borrowed blanket wrapped tightly around her shoulders. The city was awakening, taxis honking and footsteps echoing along the sidewalks, yet she remained still, replaying the events of the night in her mind. The stranger's pale face, the warmth of his brief gaze, and the sound of the ambulance doors closing lingered like a dream she could not quite believe. She exhaled slowly, watching her breath dissolve into the cool morning air. For Naomi, mornings were usually measured by survival, by finding a warm cup of coffee or a safe place to rest, but today felt different, as if something unseen had shifted the rhythm of her world. She brushed a damp curl from her face and reached into her pocket, her fingers grazing the empty space where her thin jacket had once been. A faint smile touched her lips. She had given away the only thing she owned that offered warmth, and yet she felt lighter, as though kindness itself had wrapped her in something stronger than fabric. Across the East River, sunlight glimmered against glass towers, and she wondered briefly about the man she had helped, hoping he was safe and surrounded by people who cared. Miles away, inside a private hospital suite perched high above the bustling streets, Ethan Caldwell stirred beneath crisp white linens as soft morning light streamed through floor-to-ceiling windows. The steady rhythm of a heart monitor echoed gently in the room, a quiet reminder of how close he had come to vanishing into the storm. He opened his eyes slowly, disoriented at first, his mind drifting through fragments of rain, thunder, and a voice that had called him back from darkness. "Sir, please do not fall asleep." The words echoed clearly, tender and unwavering. His gaze fell upon the chair beside his bed, where a nurse had carefully folded a thin, worn jacket. He reached for it instinctively, his fingers tracing the faded fabric as memory rushed back with startling clarity. The street lamp's glow, the rain against the pavement, and the determined eyes of the girl who had refused to leave him alone filled his thoughts. Gratitude stirred within him, quiet but profound. The door opened softly, and his physician entered with a reassuring smile, explaining that he had suffered from severe exhaustion and dehydration. Ethan listened politely, but his attention remained fixed on the jacket in his hands. "Who brought me here?" he asked, his voice steady yet urgent. The nurse hesitated, her expression warm. "A young girl stayed with you until the ambulance arrived. She would not leave your side." Ethan closed his eyes briefly, absorbing the words. In a world governed by boardrooms and billion-dollar decisions, he had rarely encountered sincerity untainted by expectation. Yet this girl, with nothing to gain, had offered him everything. He opened his eyes, resolve settling in his chest like a rising sun. "Find her," he said quietly, his tone firm with purpose. "I want to thank the girl who saved my life." As his assistant hurried to carry out the request, the morning light stretched across the polished floor, illuminating the fragile jacket resting in his hands. At that very moment, beneath the shadow of the bridge, Naomi lifted her face toward the sun, unaware that her act of compassion had already begun to reshape the destiny of one of the most powerful men in America, and that their paths, once divided by wealth and circumstance, were destined to cross again in a way neither of them could yet imagine. The city pulsed with quiet determination as morning sunlight streamed between towering skyscrapers, casting long reflections across the glass and steel of Manhattan. While inside the private hospital suite, Ethan Caldwell sat upright, the thin worn jacket still resting carefully in his hands like a fragile relic. The fabric carried the faint scent of rain and asphalt, a reminder of the night that had altered the course of his life. He ran his fingers slowly along the frayed seams, his expression thoughtful and uncharacteristically soft. For a man who had built a multi-billion-dollar empire through precision, discipline, and relentless ambition, vulnerability was an unfamiliar companion. Yet the memory of a gentle voice whispering through the storm lingered with undeniable clarity. "Sir, please do not fall asleep." The words echoed in his mind with quiet insistence, steady and sincere, and for the first time in years, Ethan felt the weight of gratitude settle deeply within his chest. The door opened with a soft knock as his executive assistant, Daniel Reeves, stepped inside, tablet in hand, and concern etched across his face. "Good morning, Mr. Caldwell," Daniel said respectfully. "The board has been informed of your condition, and your schedule has been cleared for the week." Ethan nodded slightly, his gaze still fixed on the jacket. "Cancel everything else," he replied calmly. "There is something more important." Daniel hesitated, surprised by the rare shift in priorities. "Of course, sir. How may I assist you?" Ethan lifted the jacket gently, holding it as though it were a priceless artifact. "Find the girl who saved me," he said. "She stayed with me in the rain. She gave me this." Daniel studied the worn fabric, confusion flickering across his features. "We will review the emergency reports and surveillance footage immediately," he assured him. Ethan exhaled quietly, turning his attention toward the panoramic windows where the city stretched endlessly below. "She did not help me for recognition or reward," he added. "She helped because it was the right thing to do. I want to thank her personally." Meanwhile, miles away beneath the steel lattice of the Queensboro Bridge, Naomi Carter folded her blanket neatly and placed it inside her weathered backpack as the golden light of late morning warmed the concrete around her. The hum of traffic overhead blended with the distant melody of a street musician's saxophone, creating a soundtrack to another uncertain day. She stood slowly, brushing dust from her jeans, her gaze lifting toward the skyline shimmering across the East River. For a fleeting moment, she allowed herself to wonder about the stranger she had helped, hoping he was safe, though she never imagined their lives would intersect again. Hunger nudged her forward, and she made her way toward a small community shelter on Lexington Avenue, where volunteers sometimes offered breakfast and warm smiles. As she approached, the scent of fresh coffee and toasted bread drifted into the crisp air, and her steps slowed with cautious hope. Inside, sunlight filtered through tall windows, illuminating rows of folding tables and gentle faces greeting those in need. Naomi accepted a paper cup of coffee with a grateful nod, her soft voice whispering, "Thank you." She sat quietly by the window, watching pedestrians hurry along the sidewalks, each absorbed in their own world. Across the city, Daniel Reeves reviewed surveillance footage from nearby streets, his eyes narrowing as he spotted a young girl kneeling beside Ethan in the pouring rain, her small frame shielding him from the storm. "There she is," he murmured, pausing the screen. Ethan leaned forward, his breath catching as he recognized the determined expression and kind eyes that had anchored him to life. "Find her," he repeated, his voice filled with quiet resolve. Unaware of the search unfolding, Naomi gazed out at the sunlit avenue, unaware that destiny was already moving toward her, guided by a simple act of compassion that had bridged two worlds and set the stage for a reunion neither of them could yet imagine. The soft murmur of conversation filled the community shelter as sunlight streamed through tall windows, casting warm golden patterns across the polished floor, while Naomi Carter sat quietly near the glass, her fingers wrapped around a paper cup of coffee that warmed her hands against the lingering chill of the morning. Outside, Lexington Avenue buzzed with the rhythm of New York City, yellow taxis gliding past hurried pedestrians and storefronts shimmering in the gentle glow of midday. Naomi watched the world move forward with quiet curiosity, her thoughtful brown eyes reflecting both resilience and hope. She had grown accustomed to blending into the background, another unseen figure in a city that rarely paused. Yet something within her felt different today, as if the night's act of kindness had left an invisible mark upon her heart. She brushed a loose braid from her face and exhaled softly, unaware that destiny was already drawing closer. Across Manhattan, high above the city streets, Ethan Caldwell stood near the expansive windows of his hospital suite, gazing out at the skyline as sunlight danced across the East River. The worn jacket rested carefully over his arm, its faded fabric a humble contrast to the elegance surrounding him. Daniel Reeves stood beside him, tablet in hand, his voice calm, yet purposeful. "We have identified the location where you collapsed," Daniel reported. "Surveillance footage confirms that the young woman stayed with you until the paramedics arrived. She appears to frequent a shelter on Lexington Avenue." Ethan's eyes sharpened with quiet determination. "Then we will go there," he replied. Daniel hesitated briefly, glancing at the medical monitors. "Your doctors recommend another day of rest, sir." Ethan turned from the window, his expression composed but resolute. "For years I have postponed what mattered most in the name of business. Not today. She deserves my gratitude, and I intend to give it." His voice carried a calm authority that allowed no argument. Within the hour, a sleek black sedan glided through midtown traffic, its polished surface reflecting the towering skyline as it approached the modest brick building on Lexington Avenue. Meanwhile, Naomi set aside her empty cup and offered a grateful smile to a volunteer arranging trays of pastries. "Thank you for your kindness," she said gently. The woman returned the smile warmly. "You are always welcome here, Naomi." Rising from her seat, Naomi moved toward the doorway, pausing as a beam of sunlight illuminated her path, casting a soft glow around her like a quiet promise. At that very moment, the black sedan eased to a stop outside the shelter, its presence drawing curious glances from passers-by. The rear door opened, and Ethan Caldwell stepped onto the sidewalk, his tailored suit immaculate, yet his expression softened by anticipation. He held the worn jacket carefully, as though it were a treasured keepsake rather than a simple garment. Inside, Naomi turned toward the entrance, sensing a subtle shift in the atmosphere. Her gaze met the figure standing in the doorway, and recognition flickered in her eyes like a spark of dawn. The city seemed to pause in silent acknowledgement as two worlds, separated by wealth and circumstance, finally stood face to face. Ethan's voice, steady and sincere, broke the stillness. "You stayed with me in the rain," he said gently, lifting the jacket. "And I believe this belongs to you." Naomi's breath caught as she recognized the man standing in the doorway, his presence both familiar and impossibly out of place within the humble warmth of the shelter. For a moment, the sounds around her faded into silence, replaced by the steady echo of rain from the night before and the memory of a fragile voice drifting through the storm. She stared at him, her brown eyes widening in disbelief, as sunlight streamed through the glass behind him and framed his figure in a soft golden glow. Ethan Caldwell stepped forward with quiet composure, holding the worn jacket carefully in his hands. The elegant simplicity of his tailored suit contrasted sharply with the faded fabric he carried, yet his expression held no trace of pride, only sincerity. "You stayed with me in the rain," he said gently, his voice warm and steady. "And I believe this belongs to you." Naomi hesitated, her fingers tightening around the strap of her backpack. "You are the man from last night," she whispered softly, her voice filled with surprise rather than expectation. Ethan nodded, offering a faint smile. "Yes, I am. And I owe you my life." The words settled in the air, drawing curious glances from nearby volunteers and guests, though the quiet respect in Ethan's tone kept the moment intimate and reverent. Naomi accepted the jacket slowly, her fingertips brushing the familiar fabric. "I did not do anything special," she replied humbly. "You needed help, and I could not walk away." Ethan studied her for a moment, struck by the calm dignity in her voice. "What you did was extraordinary," he said. "In a city of millions, you were the only one who stopped." Naomi lowered her gaze, a shy smile touching her lips. "Kindness should not be extraordinary," she said softly. "It should be normal." Her words lingered in the air like a quiet truth, and Ethan felt them settle deeply within his heart. For years, his life had been measured in profits, acquisitions, and negotiations, yet none of those victories had carried the simple clarity of her compassion. "May I know your name?" he asked respectfully. "Naomi Carter," she answered. "And yours?" He extended his hand gently. "Ethan Caldwell." Recognition flickered across the room as whispers began to ripple among the onlookers, but Naomi simply nodded, unfazed by the significance of his name. To her, he was not a headline or a fortune, but a man she had found in need beneath a lonely street lamp. Ethan noticed her calm indifference and felt a quiet admiration stir within him. "Naomi," he said, his voice sincere, "I would like to thank you properly. Please allow me to help you in any way I can." Naomi met his gaze, her eyes steady and thoughtful. "You do not owe me anything," she replied. "Seeing you safe is enough." Ethan paused, moved by her humility, yet determined not to let the moment slip away. "Perhaps," he said gently, "but gratitude is not a debt. It is a gift." The warmth in his words softened her hesitation, and for the first time, Naomi allowed herself to believe that this encounter was more than coincidence. Sunlight poured through the shelter windows, illuminating the space as if the city itself bore witness to their meeting. Outside, the hum of traffic continued, indifferent to the extraordinary convergence of two lives. Inside, however, something profound had begun to unfold. As Naomi slipped her jacket over her shoulders, the familiar warmth wrapped around her once more, and she realized that the simple act of compassion she had offered beneath the rain had opened a door she had never imagined. Standing face to face with Ethan Caldwell, she sensed that her life was about to change in ways neither of them could yet foresee. The shelter fell into a gentle hush as sunlight streamed through the tall windows, wrapping the room in a soft golden glow, while Naomi Carter stood quietly before Ethan Caldwell, her worn jacket now draped once again across her shoulders. The fabric felt warmer than before, not because of the morning sun, but because it carried the weight of recognition and possibility. She studied him carefully, still astonished that the man she had helped beneath a lonely street lamp was standing before her in perfect health, his presence composed yet undeniably sincere. Ethan's gaze remained steady, filled with quiet gratitude and an unfamiliar humility that softened the sharp edges of his world. "Naomi," he said gently, his voice calm and respectful, "your kindness reminded me of something I had forgotten." She tilted her head slightly, curiosity flickering in her eyes. "What is that?" she asked softly. Ethan paused, glancing around the shelter where volunteers moved with compassion and guests shared quiet conversations. That success means nothing if it is not guided by humanity, he replied. His words carried a depth that resonated through the room, drawing silent attention from those nearby. Naomi lowered her gaze for a moment, absorbing the sincerity in his tone. I did not expect anything in return, she said. Helping you was simply the right thing to do. Ethan nodded, slowly. And that is precisely why it mattered, he answered. He reached into his pocket and handed her a simple, elegant business card. The name Ethan Caldwell shimmered in understated lettering beneath the Caldwell Foundation seal. Naomi hesitated before accepting it, her fingers brushing the smooth surface as she read the name again, now fully understanding the magnitude of the man standing before her. Yet her expression remained composed, free of awe or fear. What do you want me to do with this? She asked quietly. Ethan offered a gentle smile. Consider it an invitation, not an obligation. I would like to help you pursue your dreams, whatever they may be. Naomi's eyes softened, and for a moment she seemed to look beyond the polished card to the sincerity behind it. Dreams, she whispered, almost to herself. I used to have many. Ethan listened carefully, sensing both hope and hesitation in her voice. And what are they now? He asked. Naomi hesitated, then answered with quiet honesty. I want to study, to build a life that allows me to help others the way I helped you. I want to prove that circumstances do not define a person's worth. Her words carried a quiet strength that left Ethan deeply moved. Then allow me to help you achieve that, he said. Education, housing, opportunity. Not as charity, but as recognition of your courage and compassion. Naomi looked into his eyes, searching for any trace of condescension, but found none. Instead, she saw respect. Slowly, she nodded. I will accept your help, she said gently, but only if I can earn it. Ethan's smile deepened with admiration. That is exactly what I hoped you would say. Around them, the soft hum of the shelter continued, yet the moment felt suspended in time, as though the city itself paused to witness a promise being born. Daniel Reeves stepped forward respectfully, offering Naomi a warm greeting and assuring her that arrangements would be made with care and dignity. Naomi thanked him politely, her voice steady despite the whirlwind of emotions unfolding within her. Outside, the afternoon sun illuminated Lexington Avenue, reflecting against glass towers and casting radiant light across the bustling sidewalks. As Naomi stepped toward the doorway beside Ethan, she felt a quiet sense of transformation stirring within her heart. She was no longer merely surviving. She was standing on the threshold of possibility. Ethan paused at the entrance and turned to her once more. You changed my life with a single act of kindness, he said softly. Naomi met his gaze with a gentle smile. Perhaps, she replied, we are meant to change each other's lives. As they stepped into the sunlight together, the promise of a new future unfolded before them, guided by compassion, dignity, and the extraordinary power of a simple, selfless choice. The late afternoon sun bathed Lexington Avenue in a warm amber glow as Naomi Carter stepped out of the shelter beside Ethan Caldwell, the city's steady rhythm unfolding around them like a living symphony. Yellow taxis glided past in streams of gold, and the distant hum of traffic blended with the soft murmur of pedestrians weaving along the sidewalks. Naomi paused at the curb, her gaze lifting toward the towering skyline, the reflection of glass skyscrapers shimmering like a promise she had never dared to claim. Ethan stood beside her with quiet composure, his presence calm yet grounding, as though the invisible lines separating their worlds had begun to dissolve. A sleek black sedan waited nearby, its polished surface gleaming beneath the afternoon light. Daniel Reeves opened the rear door respectfully, offering Naomi a reassuring nod. Miss Carter, we are honored to assist you, he said warmly. Naomi hesitated, her fingers tightening gently around the strap of her backpack as she turned to Ethan. Are you certain about this? She asked softly. I do not wish to intrude upon your life. Ethan met her gaze with steady sincerity. Naomi, you saved my life without hesitation. Offering you an opportunity is not an intrusion. It is an honor. His words carried no trace of obligation, only gratitude and respect. After a brief moment, Naomi nodded, accepting the sincerity in his voice. Then I will trust you, she replied gently. She stepped into the sedan, her reflection shimmering faintly in the tinted window as she settled into the plush leather seat. The interior was immaculate, its quiet elegance a stark contrast to the harsh realities she had known, yet she carried herself with calm dignity. As the car pulled into the flow of Manhattan traffic, Naomi watched the city glide past in a blur of light and motion, her heart beating with a mixture of uncertainty and hope. Ethan sat across from her, his expression thoughtful as he observed her quiet composure. "Tell me, Naomi," he said gently, "what inspired you to help a stranger in the rain?" She glanced out at the passing skyline before answering. "My grandmother used to tell me that kindness is the only wealth that never disappears," she said softly. "She believed that when you help someone, you give the world a reason to believe in goodness again." Ethan listened intently, moved by the simplicity and truth of her words. "She must have been a remarkable woman," he said. Naomi smiled faintly. "She was. She taught me that dignity is something no one can take away unless you surrender it." The sedan crossed the Queensboro Bridge, sunlight glinting across the East River below as the city stretched endlessly beyond the horizon. Ethan's voice softened with quiet resolve. "Your grandmother's wisdom lives on through you," he said, "and I intend to honor it." Moments later, the car arrived at Caldwell Tower, a gleaming structure of glass and steel that pierced the skyline with quiet authority. Naomi gazed upward in awe as the building reflected the golden light of the setting sun. "It is beautiful," she whispered. Ethan smiled gently. "This is where I built my empire," he said. "But today, I hope it becomes the place where you begin building your future." Inside, the grand lobby shimmered with polished marble floors and soft ambient lighting. Staff members greeted Ethan with respectful nods, their curiosity tempered by professionalism as Naomi walked beside him with quiet confidence. She felt the weight of unfamiliar eyes, yet she held her head high, remembering her grandmother's words. As they entered the private elevator, its glass walls revealing the city rising beneath them, Naomi felt the world expanding before her eyes. Ethan turned to her, his voice calm and sincere. "Naomi, this is only the beginning," he said. She met his gaze with a gentle smile. "Then I am ready," she replied. As the elevator ascended toward the skyline, the fading sunlight painted the sky in hues of gold and rose, and for the first time in her life, Naomi Carter felt as though she was rising with it, carried not by fortune, but by the quiet power of compassion and the promise of a new destiny unfolding before her. The private elevator ascended in serene silence, its transparent glass walls revealing the sprawling beauty of Manhattan as the sun dipped lower on the horizon, painting the sky in hues of amber and rose. Naomi Carter stood beside Ethan Caldwell, her reflection shimmering faintly against the polished steel panels, her eyes wide with quiet wonder as the city stretched endlessly beneath them. Each passing floor felt like a step into a future she had never dared to imagine. Yet she carried herself with composed dignity, her worn jacket resting gently on her shoulders like a reminder of where she had come from. Ethan observed her thoughtful expression, recognizing the mixture of awe and restraint in her gaze. "Are you comfortable?" he asked softly. Naomi nodded, offering a small, genuine smile. "It feels unreal," she admitted, "but I am grateful for the opportunity to be here." The elevator chimed gently as it reached the top floor, and the doors opened to reveal a breathtaking executive suite bathed in warm golden light. Floor-to-ceiling windows framed the skyline like a living masterpiece, while the soft glow of the setting sun illuminated polished marble floors and elegant furnishings. Naomi stepped forward slowly, her footsteps echoing softly in the expansive space. She paused near the window, gazing out at the Hudson River as boats glided peacefully through shimmering reflections of light. "It is beautiful," she whispered. Ethan approached beside her, his voice calm and sincere. "For years, I believed success was measured by numbers and titles. But last night, you reminded me that true wealth is measured by compassion." Naomi turned to him, her eyes thoughtful. "Kindness is not about wealth," she said gently. "It is about choosing to care when it would be easier not to." Ethan nodded, moved by the quiet strength of her words. "That is why I want to invest in your future," he said. "Not as charity, but as recognition of your courage and integrity." He gestured toward a polished desk where Daniel Reeves had prepared a folder containing documents and information. Inside are details for a scholarship program, a safe apartment, and access to educational opportunities. Every step is designed to support your ambitions. Naomi approached the desk slowly, her fingers brushing the smooth leather cover of the folder. She opened it with care, scanning the pages with attentive curiosity. Her breath caught softly as she realized the magnitude of what lay before her. Yet instead of astonishment, her expression reflected quiet resolve. She closed the folder gently and looked at Ethan. "I am honored," she said, "but I must earn this. I do not want anything given to me without purpose." Ethan's smile deepened with admiration. "That is precisely why you deserve it," he replied. "You will earn every opportunity, and I will ensure you have the tools to succeed." Naomi's gaze softened as she looked out once more at the glowing skyline. The golden rays of sunset reflected across the glass towers, illuminating the city in a radiant glow that mirrored the hope blossoming within her heart. "My grandmother always said that a single act of kindness can open doors that seem impossible to reach," she said quietly. Ethan followed her gaze, his voice gentle. "Then tonight, those doors have opened." As the last rays of sunlight dipped below the horizon, the lights of New York City flickered to life like a constellation of stars. Naomi stood beside Ethan, her posture steady and her spirit uplifted, sensing that she was no longer standing on the edge of uncertainty, but at the threshold of a new beginning. In that moment, high above the city that had once overlooked her, she understood that her journey was not merely about changing her own life, but about proving that compassion possessed the power to transform the world. The glow of evening settled gently over Caldwell Tower as the last rays of sunlight faded into a sea of sparkling city lights, transforming Manhattan into a shimmering constellation beneath the night sky. Naomi Carter stood near the floor-to-ceiling windows, her reflection merging with the illuminated skyline, her eyes filled with quiet determination as she absorbed the weight of the opportunity before her. The folder rested securely in her hands, its contents representing not just a future, but a promise forged through compassion. Ethan Caldwell observed her from a respectful distance, his posture composed yet thoughtful, as though he too stood at the threshold of transformation. The silence between them was not empty but profound, filled with the quiet understanding that their lives had become irrevocably intertwined. "This city never sleeps," Naomi said softly, her voice tinged with wonder. "But tonight, it feels as though it is holding its breath." Ethan stepped beside her, gazing out at the endless horizon of lights. "New York rewards those who dare to dream," he replied gently, "and it challenges those who doubt themselves. I have no doubt about you." Naomi turned toward him, her expression calm but resolute. "I will not disappoint you," she said. Ethan shook his head with a faint smile. "You are not here to prove anything to me. You are here to prove something to yourself." His words settled within her like a guiding light, steady and unwavering. Daniel Reeves entered quietly, placing a tablet on the polished desk. "Everything has been arranged," he announced. "Miss Carter's temporary residence is ready, and the admissions office at Columbia University has confirmed her academic evaluation appointment." Naomi's breath caught softly at the mention of the prestigious institution, yet her composure remained intact. "Thank you," she said graciously. Ethan nodded approvingly. "Education opens doors that no circumstance can close," he remarked. Naomi glanced once more at the city below, her voice filled with sincerity. "I want to study social work and public policy. I want to create shelters, schools, and opportunities for those who feel forgotten." Ethan's expression softened with admiration. "Then we share the same vision," he said. "I built an empire of technology, but you will build an empire of hope." Naomi's eyes shimmered with emotion, yet her voice remained steady. "Hope is the greatest legacy anyone can leave behind." Ethan extended his hand, not as a businessman sealing a deal, but as a man honoring a promise. Naomi accepted it with quiet confidence, their handshake symbolizing the union of two worlds once separated by circumstance. Beyond the glass walls, the Hudson River reflected the brilliance of the city lights, and the hum of Manhattan drifted upward like a distant melody. As Daniel discreetly stepped aside, Naomi closed the folder and held it close to her chest, feeling the weight of possibility and responsibility intertwined. "This is more than an opportunity," she said softly. "It is a chance to change lives." Ethan nodded, his voice warm with conviction. "And it began with a single act of kindness beneath a storm." Naomi smiled gently, remembering the rain-soaked night that had altered her destiny. "Kindness," she replied, "is the spark that ignites every miracle." Outside, the night deepened, and the city glowed brighter with each passing moment. In that luminous silence high above Manhattan, Naomi Carter understood that her journey had only just begun. With courage in her heart and purpose in her hands, she stepped forward into a future shaped not by circumstance, but by compassion, ready to transform the promise of hope into a legacy that would illuminate countless lives. Morning sunlight streamed through the expansive windows of Caldwell Tower, casting a gentle glow across the polished marble floors as New York City awakened beneath a sky of soft blue and drifting clouds. Naomi Carter stood quietly near the glass, watching the bustling streets far below as yellow taxis traced golden lines through the avenues and pedestrians hurried along sidewalks with purpose. The city felt alive with possibility, and for the first time in her life, she felt as though she belonged within its rhythm. Behind her, Ethan Caldwell reviewed documents at his desk, his expression calm yet thoughtful, while Daniel Reeves finalized arrangements for the day's schedule. The quiet hum of progress filled the room. Naomi turned slowly, her voice steady but filled with anticipation. "Is today real?" she asked softly. "Or am I still dreaming?" Ethan smiled warmly, rising from his chair. "It is real," he replied, "and it is only the beginning." He gestured toward the elegant folder resting on the desk. "Your academic evaluation at Columbia University is scheduled for 10 o'clock this morning. A car is ready to take you there." Naomi's eyes widened slightly, her heart quickening at the significance of the moment. "Columbia," she whispered, the name carrying both awe and determination. "I never imagined I would even step onto that campus." Ethan approached with quiet reassurance. "Dreams often begin as impossibilities," he said gently, "but courage transforms them into reality." Naomi nodded, drawing strength from his words. "Then I am ready," she said, "not just for myself, but for everyone who has ever been told they were invisible." Moments later, the sleek black sedan carried them through Midtown Manhattan, sunlight reflecting off towering glass skyscrapers as the city's vibrant energy surrounded them. Naomi gazed out the window, absorbing every detail, from the bustling crosswalks to the banners lining Broadway. As the car arrived at Columbia University, the historic campus greeted them with grand columns, ivy-covered brick buildings, and tree-lined walkways glowing beneath the morning sun. Students crossed the courtyard with books in hand, their laughter echoing softly in the crisp autumn air. Naomi stepped onto the stone pathway, her breath catching at the beauty of the scene. "It feels like stepping into another world," she murmured. Ethan stood beside her, his voice filled with quiet pride. "This is where your future begins." Inside the admissions office, warm smiles welcomed them, and Naomi spoke with sincerity and confidence about her aspirations. She shared her desire to study social work and public policy, her voice steady as she described her dream of building shelters, creating educational programs, and offering hope to those who felt forgotten. Her words resonated deeply, reflecting not only ambition but compassion shaped by experience. Ethan listened, with admiration, recognizing the strength of character that had drawn him to her. As they left the office, Naomi paused beneath the shade of an ancient oak tree, its golden leaves drifting gently to the ground. She closed her eyes for a moment, breathing in the crisp air. "My grandmother used to tell me that education is the key that unlocks every door," she said softly. Ethan nodded. "And today, you have taken hold of that key." Naomi opened her eyes, her gaze shining with renewed purpose. "I will use it wisely," she promised. "Not just to change my life, but to change the lives of others." Ethan smiled, his voice warm with conviction. "And when you do, the world will remember that it all began with a single act of kindness." As they walked together across the campus, sunlight filtering through the branches above, Naomi felt her past receding behind her and her future unfolding ahead like a path illuminated by hope. In that moment, surrounded by possibility and guided by compassion, She understood that her journey was no longer defined by hardship, but by the power of courage, dignity, and the unwavering belief that kindness could transform even the most impossible dreams into reality. The afternoon sun filtered through the golden leaves of Columbia University, casting gentle patterns across the historic stone pathways as Naomi Carter and Ethan Caldwell strolled beneath the towering oak trees. Students hurried past with books in hand, their laughter drifting softly through the crisp autumn air, while a sense of possibility shimmered in every corner of the campus. Naomi paused at the steps of the Lowe Memorial Library, her eyes reflecting both awe and determination as she gazed upon the grand columns rising toward the sky. For a moment, she stood in silence, absorbing the significance of the journey she had begun. "It feels different now," she said softly, her voice steady yet filled with emotion. "Not like I am standing outside looking in, but like I truly belong here." Ethan regarded her with quiet admiration, his expression warm and thoughtful. "You have always belonged wherever your courage has led you," he replied gently. "This place is simply recognizing what has always been within you." Naomi smiled faintly, drawing strength from his words. "I used to watch students from a distance," she confessed. "I would imagine what it felt like to walk through these gates with purpose. I never believed that one day I would be among them." Ethan nodded slowly, understanding the weight of her journey. "Dreams are not defined by where you begin," he said. "They are defined by the strength you show in pursuing them." As they continued along the tree-lined walkway, Daniel Reeves approached with a welcoming smile, holding a neatly sealed envelope. "Miss Carter," he said respectfully, "this has just arrived from the admissions office." Naomi accepted the envelope with trembling fingers, her heart beating faster as anticipation filled the air. She carefully opened it, her eyes scanning the words within. As realization dawned, her breath caught, and her lips parted in disbelief. Tears shimmered in her eyes, not of sorrow, but of triumph. "I have been accepted," she whispered, her voice barely audible above the rustle of leaves. "I have been accepted into Columbia University." Ethan's face illuminated with pride, his voice warm with sincerity. "Congratulations, Naomi. You have earned this moment." She looked up at him, her smile radiant with gratitude. "Thank you for believing in me," she said softly. Ethan shook his head gently. "You believed in yourself long before I ever met you. I merely opened a door. You had the courage to walk through it." Naomi folded the letter carefully, holding it close to her heart as she gazed out across the campus, where the afternoon sunlight bathed the buildings in a golden glow. "My grandmother used to say that education is the light that guides us out of darkness," she said quietly. "Today, I feel that light shining brighter than ever." Ethan's voice carried quiet conviction. "And one day, you will become that light for others." Inspired by the moment, Naomi turned to him with renewed purpose. "I want to create programs that support young people without homes, offering them education, mentorship, and dignity. No one should feel invisible in a world filled with opportunity." Ethan nodded with admiration. "Then together, we will make that vision a reality. The Caldwell Foundation will stand beside you every step of the way." A gentle breeze swept through the courtyard, scattering golden leaves like confetti as students passed by, unaware that history was quietly unfolding among them. Naomi inhaled deeply, embracing the crisp air and the promise it carried. For the first time, she felt not only hopeful but empowered, her future no longer defined by hardship but by purpose. As the sun dipped lower in the sky, casting a warm glow over the campus, she turned to Ethan with a serene smile. "That night in the rain changed everything," she said softly. "Not just for me, but for all the lives we will touch together." Ethan met her gaze with quiet certainty. "And this is only the beginning." Standing beneath the golden light of autumn, Naomi Carter realized that her journey had transformed from survival into legacy, guided by compassion, fueled by education, and destined to illuminate countless futures with the enduring power of kindness. The golden light of late afternoon bathed the Columbia University campus in a warm glow as Naomi Carter stood quietly on the steps of the Lowe Memorial Library, the acceptance letter still held close to her heart. The crisp autumn breeze carried the gentle rustle of falling leaves, each one drifting gracefully to the ground like a quiet celebration of change. Students passed by with books in their arms and dreams in their eyes, their laughter echoing across the historic courtyard. Yet Naomi remained still, absorbing the magnitude of the moment that had transformed her life. Ethan Caldwell stood beside her, his gaze steady and filled with pride as he watched her take in the reality of her new beginning. "You have earned every step of this journey," he said softly. Naomi turned to him, her expression radiant with gratitude and purpose. "I want to do more than succeed," she replied. "I want to give others the chance to rise, just as I have." Ethan nodded, deeply moved by her conviction. "Then let us begin," he said. Together. Weeks later, the vision they had shared began to take form. In the heart of Manhattan, beneath the towering skyline that symbolized ambition and resilience, preparations were underway for the inauguration of a new initiative through the Caldwell Foundation. The grand ballroom shimmered beneath crystal chandeliers, its polished floors reflecting the soft glow of elegant lighting as distinguished guests, philanthropists, educators, and city officials gathered in anticipation. At the center of the stage stood a simple podium adorned with a single emblem, the Naomi Carter Initiative for Hope and Opportunity. Naomi stood behind the curtain, her heart beating with quiet anticipation as she adjusted the sleeve of her blazer. She was no longer the girl who had once slept beneath a bridge, but a young woman poised to inspire change. Ethan approached her with a reassuring smile. "Are you ready?" he asked gently. Naomi inhaled deeply, steadying her breath. "I am," she replied. "This is not just my story. It belongs to everyone who has ever felt invisible." As her name was announced, Naomi stepped onto the stage, greeted by a standing ovation that filled the room with warmth and admiration. The soft glow of cameras and chandeliers illuminated her path as she approached the podium, her eyes reflecting both humility and determination. She looked out at the audience, her voice calm and clear as she began to speak. "Not long ago, I stood on a rain-soaked street with nothing but hope," she said. "I helped a stranger because kindness was the only thing I had to give. I did not know that single act would change my life forever." The room fell silent, captivated by her sincerity. "Today, we open doors for those who have been overlooked," she continued. "This initiative will provide scholarships, safe housing, mentorship, and opportunity for young people who need a chance to be seen, heard, and believed in." Applause filled the hall, echoing with admiration as Naomi's words resonated deeply within every heart. Ethan watched from the front row, his expression filled with pride as he witnessed the extraordinary impact of her courage. Naomi concluded her speech with a gentle smile. "My grandmother once told me that kindness is the light that guides us through darkness. Tonight we shine that light together." As the audience rose once more in thunderous applause, Ethan joined her on stage, standing beside her as a partner in purpose. Beyond the ballroom windows, the Manhattan skyline glittered beneath the night sky, a radiant testament to dreams realized and futures transformed. In that moment, Naomi Carter understood that her journey had come full circle, not as an end, but as the beginning of a legacy built upon compassion, dignity, and the enduring power of hope. The applause gradually softened into a warm, lingering echo as the grand ballroom of Caldwell Tower shimmered beneath crystal chandeliers, their light reflecting like a constellation across polished marble floors. Naomi Carter stood at the center of the stage, her heart steady and her spirit illuminated by the journey that had brought her there. Just months earlier, she had stood beneath a rain-soaked street lamp with nothing but compassion to offer a stranger, and now she stood before a room filled with leaders, educators, and dreamers, her story a testament to the power of kindness. As the audience settled into attentive silence, Ethan Caldwell approached her side, his expression filled with pride and quiet admiration. Together, they gazed out at the sea of hopeful faces, each one touched by the promise of a brighter future. Naomi inhaled deeply, the memory of her grandmother's gentle wisdom guiding her words as she stepped forward once more. "Every life is a story," she began softly, her voice clear and resonant. "Some begin with privilege, while others begin with struggle. But what defines us is not where we start, but how we choose to rise." The audience listened in reverent silence, captivated by the sincerity of her message. "On a stormy night," she continued, "I helped a stranger because kindness was the only gift I had to give. I did not know that single moment would open a door to a future I had only dreamed of. Tonight, that door stands open for countless others." Applause rippled through the room as the significance of her words settled into every heart. Behind her, a large screen illuminated with images of newly established shelters, scholarship recipients, and students stepping into classrooms filled with hope. Each photograph told a story of transformation, each smile a testament to the initiative that bore her name. Ethan watched quietly, his voice soft with emotion as he leaned toward her. "You have done more than change lives, Naomi," he said. "You have given them a reason to believe." Naomi smiled gently, her eyes shining beneath the radiant lights. "And you gave me the chance to begin," she replied. As the evening drew to a close, guests gathered to celebrate the launch of the Naomi Carter Initiative for Hope and Opportunity. Their conversations filled with admiration and renewed purpose. Beyond the towering windows, the Manhattan skyline glowed against the velvet night, its lights shimmering like stars over the Hudson River. Later, as the ballroom grew quiet, Naomi stepped onto the terrace overlooking the city. A cool breeze brushed against her face, carrying the distant hum of traffic and the promise of endless possibility. She closed her eyes for a moment, listening to the heartbeat of the city that had once overlooked her and now embraced her as its own. Ethan joined her, standing beside her in companionable silence. "Do you remember the rain that night?" he asked gently. Naomi nodded, her voice filled with warmth. "Yes," she said. "It was cold and uncertain, but it led me here." Ethan smiled softly. "It reminded me that even the smallest act of compassion can change the course of a life." Naomi gazed out at the glowing skyline, her reflection shimmering against the glass. "And now," she said, "it will change the course of many." In the distance, church bells chimed softly, marking the passage of time as the city sparkled beneath the night sky. Naomi slipped her hands into the pockets of her familiar jacket, the same one she had once given away without hesitation. It had become more than a garment. It was a symbol of courage, humility, and the enduring power of kindness. As dawn's first light began to touch the horizon, painting the sky with hues of gold and rose, she turned to Ethan with a serene smile. "This is not the end of my story," she said gently. "It is only the beginning of a legacy built on hope." Ethan nodded, his voice steady with conviction. And it all began with a single act of compassion. Standing high above the city that never slept, Naomi Carter looked toward the rising sun, her heart filled with purpose and her future illuminated by the quiet truth she had always believed, that kindness, freely given, possesses the power to transform the world.